What if a piece of your own story was hidden in a place you'd never expect? In the burning sands of Somalia. What if the DNA of one people held secrets so ancient, so powerful, that it could rewrite the history of every human alive today? Imagine it. Winds that have blown for 20,000 years across the Horn of Africa, carrying the whispers of migrations older than any empire. Picture faces, proud, weathered, luminous, carrying within them a blueprint untouched by time. Their blood remembers things we have long forgotten. I remember the first time I stumbled onto this mystery. Late one night, reading a forgotten paper buried deep in an archive, I found a line that made me stop breathing. Somali DNA preserves a record of ancient human movement unmatched anywhere else. It didn't make sense at first. A single people, so isolated, yet so connected to the very origins of us all. Think about it. While kingdoms rose and fell, while oceans shifted and cities crumbled, here, in the blazing deserts and coastal winds of Somalia, a people were preserving a genetic legacy untouched, unbroken, a living museum, hidden in plain sight. And yet, how many know about it? How many realize that inside Somali bloodstreams run the earliest crossroads of Africa and Eurasia? What if the real story of humanity's great journey isn't written in textbooks, but hidden inside the veins of the nomads, the herders, the poets of Somalia? In the next few minutes, we will unravel the incredible mystery of Somali DNA. A mystery that does not belong only to them, but to you, to me, to all of us. Stay with me, because once you hear this story, you'll never look at your own reflection the same way again. When you step onto the arid plains of Somalia, it feels like time holds its breath. The sun, the wind, the endless rust-red earth, everything seems suspended, waiting for a story to be told. But what if the real story isn't written on the land, but hidden inside the people who have walked it for thousands of years? Imagine a world where bloodlines run deeper than rivers, where families have woven themselves into the fabric of the earth generation after generation, unbroken, unwavering. I remember staring at an ancient clan map of Somalia and realizing, these lines, these borders weren't drawn by colonizers. They were written by ancestors who passed their legacy through marriage, through kinship, through DNA itself. In a world that has been shaped and reshaped by conquest and empire, Somalia stands almost alone. Genetic studies show that across vast distances, from the dry north to the lush river valleys of the south, the Somali people remain one of the most genetically unified populations on Earth. But how? How did a people spread across thousands of kilometers maintain a genetic signature so singular, so consistent? The answer lies in the ancient power of the clan. For countless generations, Somalis have married within their own lineages, not as a casual preference, but as a sacred duty. Cousins marrying cousins, clans sealing their histories together like layers of ancient sediment. Every marriage, every child, another stitch in a tapestry that has resisted the erosion of time. You might think this would make their story small, confined, but it's the opposite. Their genetic homogeneity isn't a sign of isolation. It's a living monument to an ancestral strategy that defied wars, droughts, invasions, and migrations. Have you ever wondered what it would take to preserve a memory? Not in stone, not in song, but in blood. This isn't just survival. It's resistance. It's memory, carried in chromosomes, singing across generations. And yet, even with this powerful internal unity, the question remains. If their DNA is so consistent, what ancient forces shaped its foundation? The real mystery isn't just how Somali DNA stayed so frozen. It's what ancient fires forged it in the first place. And that secret is even stranger than you might imagine. Imagine two worlds, Africa and Eurasia, separated by oceans, deserts, and millennia. Now imagine those worlds colliding, not in war, not in conquest, but quietly, deep inside the blood of a forgotten people. When I first saw the numbers, I almost didn't believe them. Somali DNA, 60% East African, 40% West Eurasian. But it wasn't the numbers that stunned me. It was the story behind them. This wasn't some recent mixing. No armies crossing seas, no empires reaching out. This fusion happened tens of thousands of years ago, long before the first stone temples of Mesopotamia rose from the earth, before farming, before writing, before kings. It happened when the world was young, and humans were still wanderers. What if I told you that around 23,000 years ago, a group of ancient humans, carrying Eurasian genes, crossed the narrow Red Sea and entered the Horn of Africa, weaving themselves into the destiny of Somalia forever? Not Arab traders, not Egyptian dynasties, but forgotten hunters and gatherers whose footsteps were lost to the sands of time. Until now, it gives me chills to think about it. While Europe was frozen under sheets of ice, and the Nile Valley was a desolate wasteland, These early travelers found refuge in the Horn. They brought with them memories of another world, and they left those memories not in stories, but in the strands of DNA still pulsing through Somali veins today. But here's the twist. The West Eurasian ancestry in Somali people isn't like the Arab, Berber, or even Levantine DNA found elsewhere. It's older, purer. It's a unique genetic branch, the Ethio-Somali component, diverging from other Eurasian groups before agriculture even began. Think about that for a moment. While elsewhere humanity built civilizations, Somalis preserved a whisper of a migration so ancient that it predates farming itself. If DNA is a time machine, then Somali genomes are windows into a forgotten chapter of human movement, a chapter no history book ever dared to write. And yet, this is only part of the enigma, because when we look deeper, another paradox emerges. Why did this ancient fusion survive so purely in Somalia, but fade almost everywhere else? In the next breath, we'll step even closer into the very divide between the fathers and the mothers of Somali ancestry, because their stories are not the same. If you could trace your ancestry back across time, would your father's blood tell the same story as your mother's? For the Somali people, the answer is a breathtaking no. Standing in the vast Somali deserts, it's easy to imagine that life here was always simple, static. But when you zoom into their DNA, a wild contradiction bursts into view. I remember staring at one genetic chart in disbelief. The Y chromosome line, the father's legacy, was almost pure East African, silent, unchanging, like a monument in the sand. But the maternal DNA, it sang a very different song. The Y DNA revealed a deep bond with ancient East African ancestors, dominated by a lineage called EM35, passed down like a sacred flame across countless fathers and sons. But mothers? They carried with them a cargo of distant memories, markers from Africa, yes, but also echoes from faraway Eurasian lands. It's as if, across the ancient millennia, the Horn of Africa became a portal where distant women, travelers, migrants, survivors, stepped ashore, blending their lineages into the fierce pastoral cultures of Somalia. I couldn't help but picture it. The hard, weathered men, rooted deep into the same soils as their ancestors, and the women, carrying secrets from shores far beyond the horizon. How many unknown journeys are hidden in a mother's blood? How many silent crossings of oceans and deserts are locked in a single mitochondrial whisper? Scientific studies reveal it again and again. Somali maternal DNA holds a complex, hybrid legacy, woven from African, Near Eastern, and even more distant threads. Imagine a time when ocean currents, not airplanes, connected distant lands. When a shipwreck, a storm, a wandering caravan could shift the destiny of entire peoples. And yet, through all this mixing, the Somali paternal line remained like stone, unchanged, unmoved, a foundation that neither flood nor famine could erase. It's a strange, beautiful paradox. The Somali people, at once guardians of ancient African fathers and heirs of wandering, wide-sailed mothers. What does it mean to carry two histories inside one body? To be both rooted and unrooted, native and nomad, home and horizon? In Somali DNA, the answer is written not in words, but in the double helix of memory itself. And as we move forward, the survival story written in their genes becomes even more astonishing, because this was not just about heritage. It was about evolving against one of the harshest environments on Earth. When I first read about Somali genetics, I thought I understood survival. I was wrong. Their DNA isn't just a map of who they are. It's a living manual of how to endure when the Earth itself seems determined to erase you. Imagine endless seasons where the rain never comes. Imagine skies so bright they bleach the very color from the stones. Now imagine surviving here, not for decades, but for tens of thousands of years. Somalis didn't just adapt, they rewired their biology. Scientists discovered that many Somalis carry rare lactase persistence genes, letting them digest milk long after childhood. But here's the twist. Their genetic mutations aren't the same as those found in Europeans. They evolved their own versions, a unique biological rebellion against starvation. It makes you wonder, what would it take for your own body to evolve, not over centuries, but over generations, just to drink a glass of milk? And it wasn't just about food. Water, salt, sunlight, the very elements of survival carved signatures into their blood. Genes like ADP1A1 and AQP2, crucial for salt balance and hydration, show sharp selection in Somali DNA, as if their ancestors were sculpted by the desert itself. I remember hiking once through a stretch of Somali coastline where the sun hit like a hammer. Every breath was like inhaling fire. And yet, the people around me, young boys running through the dunes, women carrying water on their heads, moved like the heat was their ally. not their enemy. It made me realize adaptation isn't just survival. It's intimacy with the land. It's a pact with the unforgiving. Even skin color tells a story here. Pigmentation genes like SLC24A5 and SLC45A2 have shaped Somali skin, balancing the brutal UV assault with the need to retain critical nutrients like folate. Every shade, every cell is a testament. We were made for this. And hidden deeper still are the pharmacogenetic secrets, rare mutations that make certain medicines behave differently in Somali bodies. Warfarin resistance, drug metabolism variants, unseen until modern science finally caught up. Ask yourself, how many of your ancestors had to adapt, suffer, and change just so you could breathe easy today? Somali DNA whispers the answer. Survival isn't a story of luck. It's a story of relentless, breathtaking adaptation. But adaptation wasn't the end of their journey, because buried even deeper in Somali genetics is a legacy that reaches straight into the world of modern medicine and into the risks their descendants now face. And that part of the story is both beautiful and heartbreaking. I used to think DNA was just a code, a static map, something cold and scientific. But when I learned about Somali genetics, I realized DNA can also be a battlefield. Hidden in the Somali genome are scars, silent witnesses to ancient struggles we can barely imagine. Struggles for food, for water, for survival, but also struggles we are only beginning to understand. Struggles inside the body itself. One evening, sitting in a research library, I came across a single sentence that made me freeze. 93% of Somali children with type 1 diabetes carry the same rare genetic risk allele. It hit me like a punch. This wasn't just a number. It was generations of survival carving invisible prices into bloodlines. The same adaptations that once helped Somali ancestors conquer drought, heat, and starvation now leave their descendants vulnerable to autoimmune diseases in the modern world. A cruel irony. Evolution had armed them for deserts, but not for processed foods, antibiotics, and the sedentary life of today. Even their rare blood traits tell a story few know. Unlike many African populations, Somalis have almost no sickle cell trait. Why? Because in Somalia's ancient past, malaria wasn't a deadly threat. The environment shaped not just how they lived, but who they became, molecule by molecule. And what about medicine? Variants in Somali genes mean standard drug doses. The ones designed for European or Asian bodies might not work the same way for them. Imagine being prescribed a life-saving drug and finding out your DNA refuses to cooperate. How many Somali lives have been caught in this silent mismatch between ancient adaptation and modern expectation? It's humbling to realize every gene is a decision made by time. Every mutation is a prayer for survival, paid for by the suffering of countless forgotten ancestors. And still, against all odds, their story continues. When you see a Somali child today, laughing, running, dreaming, you're witnessing the survival of a genetic lineage that withstood ice ages, deserts, famines, and wars. A lineage older than the pyramids, older than history. Ask yourself, how many struggles were won, and how many sacrifices made, just so that blood could still flow through living veins today? Somali DNA is more than a map. It's a living epic, a story written not on paper, but in blood. And it reminds us, survival is never free. It is earned, paid, and carried, one heartbeat at a time.